Uganda is one of the largest producers of sugar in East Africa, with nearly 50% being produced in the eastern part of the country. 13 sugar factories in Uganda are in Busoga region, and these control almost 92.02% of the sugar market, thus making Busoga a sugarcane zone, with most people engaged in sugarcane activities as growers, planters, cutters, loaders, transporters, and even others hiring out their land for sugarcane planting. In the year 2022, according to the National Labour Force Survey Uganda Bureau of Statistics, it was noted that 39.5% children between the ages of 5 to 17 years, that is about 6.2 million children, were engaged in child labour. Rural areas having a prevalence rate of 42.3%, and in Busoga alone having 46% of child labourers. Busoga sub-region has the highest number of children ages 6 to 13 years in employment, that is according to the National Bureau of Statistics, with 92% of the child labour in the agriculture sector. Today, we present to you the plight of children in the sugarcane business in Busoga region.
In the rural sugarcane growing areas of Busoga, households can be described as living in chronic poverty, most of them being headed by the elderly, sickly, and other vulnerable groups like single mothers. These households have no land to grow food crops, since they hired out most of the land for sugarcane growing, and therefore they have to work with their children on other people's farms in order to be able to afford their bread. Children in this region are exposed to child labor from as young as the age of 5 in order for them to supplement on the feeding for the family, and some of them are the sole providers. It is hard to prevent these children from this form of manipulation because it is the only way of survival for their families. At the age of 8, Sharif Payanda Msumba is the only boy in the household and the mother's only assistant in looking for food, especially when she's sick or attending to sick her sister. The family has no land to cultivate for food, and all they get is their bread from working at sugarcane cutters. The children in this home have no hope of ever going to school because they have no means, and all other basic needs are looked at as a luxury. All they can afford is the day's food, and sometimes going without it. It is not only Msumba and his family. There are hundreds and perhaps thousands of children going through this same ordeal. Juma Mugabo, a 13-year-old boy, lives with an elderly grandmother and several other siblings, 7 in number, and he is the sole breadwinner in this entire family. Mugabo was able to partly attend UPE school up to only primary 3, and he does not have any aspirations for the future beyond sugarcane cutting. He is the sole source of survival for his family, and without him and his trade, there would be no food for his family, as his ailing grandmother cannot do much. These two and other families, all the other basic needs have been summarized into one, which is food. Others like medical care, education, clothing, name it, are luxuries that they cannot afford. As employees in the sugarcane business, these children are entitled to a payment of 10,000 Uganda shillings for cutting 120 bundles of sugarcane, with each bundle containing 20 pieces of sugarcane. And of this, there is a deduction for the lunch. It will take the likes of Musumba and Juma about 2 days to earn the 10,000 shillings from their labor. However, these children are preferred because they are cheap and submissive workers, and sometimes this is the only way their families can be helped to survive. The employers are aware of the rights of these children, but if they do not employ them, they will not be able to support their families and will starve to death. The employers many times feel the sympathy and provide all the clothes and food. However, this is not sustainable, so the children must work to fend for themselves and their families. Police in this area is aware that children are engaged in the sugarcane business and that this grossly affects their education. And occasionally, they conduct patrols, especially during the beginning of every school term, to curb this vice. The iron is, however, that those arrested have to part with some amount of money before they are released, which money cannot be afforded by many poor households. These arrested have not reversed the trend either, as it continues on and on. The OC Columbia Police Post, Assistant Superintendent of Police Kagwa, advises that sensitization of parents and the communities can reverse this trend, although he's not sure that this alone is the way to go. In conclusion, the families need sustainable support in form of formal education for their children. The children need to be empowered to be in charge of their future by attending education and basic employable skills. The children need a controlled environment like a school in order to curb on the moral degeneration from the sugarcane cutting environment. These children work with adults who have exposed them to vices like substance abuse, theft, sex abuse, and juvenile delinquency in general. There is need for provision of home-based care for the elderly, sickly, and other vulnerable groups like child-headed household. Interventions like provision of better shelter, medical attention, clothing, and food are all that is required to support these families living in the chronic and absolute poverty. Vigilance by government and law enforcers to ensure that the children are not in sugarcane cutting but in school. Government should put up a special program and interventions for the sugarcane zones to address the challenges faced by these families, which are clearly living in chronic poverty. Without serious interventions, the sugarcane growing regions of Busoga is likely to experience an increasing number of illiterate children and an overly increasing number of people living in chronic poverty.